Veteran single dad let a strange girl stay for one night unaware she was a millionaire's daughter. And by morning his quiet cabin would become the center of a secret so powerful it could shatter or save his broken family. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Thunder crackled overhead as Ethan Walker stirred the pot of beef stew on his old gas stove. The familiar aroma of carrots, potatoes, and herbs filled the warm kitchen of their small cabin. Outside, rain pelted against the windows with growing intensity, creating a steady drumbeat that echoed through their home. "Smells good, Dad," Lily said from her perch at the kitchen table, her math homework spread out before her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her pencil tapped rhythmically against her textbook. "Way better than last time." Ethan smiled slightly, remembering the burned mess from his previous attempt. "Practice makes perfect, kiddo." His calloused hands reached for the salt, adding a pinch more to the bubbling stew. Years of military precision had taught him to be methodical, even in cooking. Lightning flashed, illuminating their cozy kitchen in stark white. The windows rattled as thunder boomed immediately after, making Lily jump in her seat. "That was close," she muttered, hugging herself. "Storm's getting worse." Ethan nodded, his weathered face showing concern as he glanced out the window into the darkness. The trees swayed violently in the wind, their branches casting dancing shadows across their front yard. "Good thing we're inside. Nobody should be out in weather like this." Just then, 3 loud knocks echoed through the cabin, rising above the storm's fury. Lily's eyes widened, and Ethan's body tensed instinctively, old military habits kicking in. "Who could that be?" Lily asked, pushing back from the table. "Stay there," Ethan said firmly, turning down the stove's heat. He moved cautiously toward the front door, his steps silent despite his size. Through the window beside the door, he could make out a slender figure hunched against the rain. Another series of knocks, more desperate this time. Ethan's hand hesitated on the doorknob. Years of training and life experience told him to be careful, but something about the figure's defeated posture pulled at his conscience. He opened the door slowly, ready for anything. A young woman stood on his porch, completely drenched. Her expensive-looking clothes clung to her frame, and her dark hair hung in wet ropes around her face. She hugged herself tightly, shivering in the cold. "I'm so sorry to disturb you," she said, her teeth chattering. "My car broke down about a mile back and my phone's dead. Could I please come in? Just until the storm passes?" Ethan studied her carefully. She was well-spoken, probably in her mid-20s, with an air of refinement that seemed at odds with their rural setting. His instincts told him she was hiding something, but her distress appeared genuine. "Please," she added softly, meeting his gaze with large, desperate eyes. "I don't know where else to go." Behind him, Lily had crept closer. "Dad?" she whispered. "We can't leave her out there." Ethan's jaw tightened as he considered his options. Finally, he stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in," he said gruffly. "But stay where I can see you." Relief flooded the young woman's face as she hurried inside. Water pooled beneath her feet on the wooden floor, and she trembled violently from the cold. "I'm Sophia," she offered, wrapping her arms tighter around herself. "Ethan Walker," he replied curtly. "This is my daughter, Lily." "Hi," Lily said, curiosity evident in her voice. "You must be freezing, Dad. Can we get her something dry to wear?" Ethan nodded reluctantly. "Wait here," he told Sophia, then disappeared down the hallway. He returned moments later with an old flannel shirt and a pair of sweatpants. "Bathroom's down the hall, first door on the right," he said, handing her the clothes. "They'll be too big, but they're dry." "Thank you," Sophia said quietly, accepting the clothes with trembling hands. "You're very kind." While she changed, Ethan moved back to the kitchen, keeping one ear trained on the bathroom door. Lily followed him, buzzing with questions. "Where do you think she came from?" she whispered. "She looks like she stepped out of a magazine or something." "Don't know," Ethan replied, stirring the stew with more force than necessary. And don't get too attached. She'll be gone as soon as the storm passes." When Sophia emerged from the bathroom, she looked almost comical in Ethan's oversized clothes. She'd rolled up the sleeves and pant legs multiple times, and the shirt hung nearly to her knees. But the shivering had subsided, and some color had returned to her cheeks. "The stew's ready," Ethan announced, more out of obligation than hospitality. "You might as well eat something." "Oh, I couldn't impose," Sophia began, but her stomach growled loudly, betraying her hunger. Lily giggled. "Come on, Dad's actually managed not to burn it this time." They ate in awkward silence, broken only by the storm's continued assault outside. Sophia answered their few direct questions with vague responses, offering little about herself beyond her first name. Ethan noticed how she held her spoon, with the kind of proper etiquette that spoke of expensive finishing schools and formal dinners. After the meal, Lily cleared the dishes while Ethan built a fire in the stone fireplace. Sophia sat on the edge of the worn armchair closest to the flames, looking small and lost in his clothes. "Thank you again," she said softly, watching the flames dance. "For taking me in." Ethan stood by the window, his stance rigid as he watched the storm rage outside. Lightning illuminated the yard in bright flashes, and the wind howled through the trees. In the firelight's glow, he could see Lily perched on the couch, stealing glances at their mysterious guest. His daughter's fascination worried him. They'd had a quiet life since her mother passed, and this stranger, with her secrets and refined manners, threatened to disturb that peace. Yet something in Sophia's eyes, a profound loneliness he recognized all too well, had made him open that door. The rain continued to pound against the windows as Ethan stood his silent vigil, wondering if compassion would prove to be his undoing. Ethan pulled a chipped blue plate from the cabinet, his weathered hands moving with hesitation. The sound of Lily chatting with their unexpected guest drifted in from the living room. He placed the extra plate on their small oak dining table, the one he'd crafted himself during those sleepless nights after Sarah passed. "Dinner's ready," he called out, his voice carrying over the persistent drumming of rain against the windows. Sophia approached the table with graceful steps, wrapped in his old flannel jacket that seemed to swallow her slight frame. Her long, dark hair had begun to dry, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. Lily bounced into her usual chair, her eyes bright with curiosity. "This smells wonderful, Mr. Walker," Sophia said, carefully settling into her seat. "Thank you for your kindness." The way she held her spoon, delicate and precise, caught Ethan's attention. Her posture was too straight, her movements too refined for someone who'd been roughing it on the road. 20 years in the military had taught him to notice details, and something about this young woman didn't add up. "It's just simple stew," he replied, serving them each a portion. "Nothing fancy." "Sometimes the simplest things are the best." Sophia took a small bite, closing her eyes in appreciation. "Like music. Sometimes a single piano melody can say more than an entire orchestra." Lily perked up. "You play piano?" "I do." Sophia's face lit up with genuine warmth. "Do you? I'm learning. We have an old upright piano that used to be Mom's." Lily glanced quickly at her father before continuing. "What's your favorite piece to play?" "Debussy's Clair de Lune." Sophia's answer came without hesitation. "Though lately I've been working on some contemporary pieces too." Ethan watched the exchange silently, noting how naturally Sophia engaged with his daughter. No forced cheeriness or patronizing tones, just honest conversation. "I'm reading this amazing book about a pianist," Lily said, gesturing with her spoon. "She has to choose between her music and her family, but in the end—" "The Midnight Sonata?" Sophia asked, her eyes sparkling. "By Rebecca Chen?" "Yes." Lily practically bounced in her seat. "Have you read it?" "3 times, Sophia admitted with a small laugh. "That ending gets me every time." Thunder boomed outside, making them all jump. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Ethan rose to check the emergency lanterns, just in case. When he returned, Sophia and Lily were deep in discussion about their favorite books. The way the author describes music, It's like you can hear it in your head while reading, Sophia was saying, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. Exactly, Lily agreed. Dad, you should read it too. It's about a veteran, like you. Ethan sat back down, noting how Sophia's expression shifted with interest at this revelation about his background. But she didn't pry, didn't ask the usual questions about his service that civilians tended to blurt out, another detail that didn't quite fit. The conversation flowed easily through dinner, mostly between Lily and Sophia. They discovered shared interests in classical music, photography, and rescue dogs. Sophia spoke about volunteering at animal shelters, her voice softening when she described helping scared animals learn to trust again. Ethan contributed occasional nods and brief responses, but mostly he observed. Their guest had an easy way of listening, giving Lily her full attention. Yet there was something guarded in her eyes, especially when the conversation turned toward personal details about her life. She deflected those questions skillfully, turning them back to safer topics. After dinner, Sophia insisted on helping with the dishes despite Ethan's protests. Her movements in the kitchen were precise but unpracticed, like someone who knew proper etiquette but hadn't spent much time doing household chores. The storm showed no signs of letting up. Rain lashed against the windows, and wind howled through the trees surrounding their cabin. Ethan brought out some extra blankets and a pillow for the couch. "I can't thank you enough," Sophia said quietly as she accepted them. "I know taking in a stranger is a risk." "Just for tonight," Ethan reminded her firmly. She nodded, something like resignation flickering across her face. "Of course. I understand." Lily helped Sophia arrange the blankets on the couch, chattering about their plans to practice piano together in the morning. Ethan had to clear his throat twice before his daughter finally said goodnight and headed upstairs to bed. As he turned to follow, Lily caught his arm in the hallway. Her voice dropped to a whisper, though the storm would have covered their conversation anyway. "She seems nice, Dad," Lily said, her eyes pleading. "Can we trust her?" Ethan looked back toward the living room, where Sophia was curling up on the couch, her small form almost disappearing under the pile of blankets. She looked young and vulnerable, but his instincts told him there was more to her story than she was sharing. "One night," he said firmly. "That's it." Morning sunlight streamed through the cabin's weathered windows, casting warm squares of light across the wooden floor. The smell of coffee and pancakes filled the small kitchen where Sophia stood at the stove, her honey-blonde hair caught in the golden glow. She hummed a gentle melody while showing Lily how to flip a perfect pancake. "See? It's all in the wrist," Sophia demonstrated, her movements graceful and precise. "When you see those little bubbles forming, that's your signal." Lily's face scrunched in concentration as she mimicked the motion. "Like this?" "Perfect." Sophia's smile brightened the already sunny kitchen. "Your dad's going to be impressed." In the doorway, Ethan paused, coffee mug in hand. The sight before him stirred something both warm and uncomfortable in his chest. It had been years since he'd witnessed such a domestic scene in his kitchen, not since Sarah. He pushed the thought away. "Morning, Dad," Lily beamed, proudly displaying a slightly lopsided pancake. "Sophia's teaching me her secret recipe." "Is she now?" Ethan's voice carried a hint of wariness despite the peaceful scene. "I need to run to Thompson's store for more coffee. You good here, Lily?" "We're fine, Dad. Bring back some maple syrup?" Ethan nodded, grabbing his worn leather jacket from the hook by the door. The morning air was crisp and clean after last night's storm, puddles reflecting the bright sky. As he walked the familiar path to the general store, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about their guest. Her manners, her way of speaking, it all seemed too refined for someone who'd simply gotten caught in the rain. The bell above Thompson's door chimed as Ethan entered. Bill Thompson, who'd run the store for 30 years, was glued to the small TV behind the counter. "Morning, Bill. Coffee's out at home." "Ethan." Bill turned, his eyes wide with excitement. "You won't believe what's been on the news all morning. That Bennett girl, you know, the millionaire's daughter, she's gone missing. They're saying she ran away from home. Ethan's hand froze on the coffee tin. What? Yeah, look here. Bill turned up the volume on the TV. A polished news anchor's voice filled the small store. Continuing our top story. The search continues for Sophia Bennett, daughter of philanthropist James Bennett. The 24-year-old was last seen leaving her father's estate 3 days ago. The coffee tin clattered to the floor as Sophia's photograph appeared on screen. The same young woman who was standing in his kitchen right now, making pancakes with his daughter. Ethan, you okay there? Bill asked, concerned. I forgot something at home. Put that coffee on my tab, Bill. Ethan was already heading for the door, his heart pounding. He practically ran back to the cabin, his mind racing. A millionaire's daughter? In his home? With his daughter? The protective instinct that had served him well in combat kicked into high gear. The sound of laughter greeted him as he burst through the door. Lily and Sophia were seated at the table, plates piled high with pancakes, looking for all the world like they'd known each other forever. Dad, what's wrong? Lily's smile faded at the sight of his expression. Lily, go to your room. His voice was quiet but firm. The tone she knew not to argue with. But, now please. Sophia's face had gone pale. She set down her fork with trembling fingers as Lily reluctantly left the kitchen. Ethan strode to the living room and switched on the TV. The news was still running the story, Sophia's photograph prominent on the screen. He turned to face her, his jaw tight. Want to explain this? Sophia's shoulders slumped, her earlier cheerfulness evaporating like morning dew. I was going to tell you. When? After how many more lies? I never lied. Tears welled in her eyes. I just didn't tell you everything. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Ethan's voice was hard. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you could bring to my family? There are people looking for you, important people with resources. Please, Sophia stood, her hands clasped together. It's not what you think. I'm not some spoiled rich girl running away on a whim. That house, it's suffocating. My father, he only sees me as an extension of himself, a piece in his grand philanthropic image. Her words tumbled out faster now, desperate. Do you know what it's like to have every moment of your life scheduled, managed, controlled? To have people watch your every move, but never really see you? To have everything money can buy except the one thing you want most? And what's that? Ethan asked, though his tone had softened slightly. To be loved for who I am, not what I represent. A tear slid down her cheek. Last night was the first time in years I felt real. The way you and Lily live. It's so honest, so true. No pretense, no expectations except to be there for each other. Ethan ran a hand through his gray-streaked hair, conflict evident in his features. None of that changes the fact that you're putting us at risk by being here. I have Lily to think about. I understand. Sophia wiped her eyes. But please, I'm begging you, give me one more day. Just one day to figure out what to do next. I promise I won't bring any trouble to your door. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. Beyond the expensive clothes and refined manners, he saw something familiar in her eyes, the same lost look he'd seen in many young soldiers' faces, people searching for their place in the world. He reached for the TV remote and switched it off, the silence heavy between them. You can't stay here, he said finally. It's not safe, for any of us. Sophia's face crumpled, fresh tears spilling onto her cheeks. Please, she whispered, just one more day. That's all I'm asking for. Ethan paced the kitchen, his weathered hands gripping his coffee mug too tightly. Every few seconds, his eyes darted to Sophia, who sat quietly at the table, her shoulders tense. Until evening, he finally said, his voice firm but not unkind. Then we need to figure something out. Relief washed over Sophia's face. Thank you, Mr. Walker. I promise I won't be any trouble. Lily bounced in her seat, barely containing her excitement. "Can I show Sophia my garden? Please, Dad?" Ethan nodded slowly, watching as his daughter practically dragged their guest outside to the small vegetable patch behind the cabin. Through the kitchen window, he observed as Sophia, still wearing his oversized flannel shirt from the night before, knelt beside Lily in the dirt without hesitation. To his surprise, Sophia rolled up her sleeves and dove right into the weeding, asking Lily questions about each plant with genuine interest. Her delicate hands, which he'd assumed had never seen a day of hard work, moved confidently through the soil. An hour later, Sophia came inside, her face smudged with dirt but wearing a bright smile. "Mr. Walker, I noticed your back steps are loose. I could help fix them if you have tools." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You know carpentry? My father's groundskeeper taught me basic repairs. He said everyone should know how to use a hammer properly." She shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. "I used to help him when Father wasn't around." Together, they gathered tools from Ethan's workshop. He watched, impressed despite himself, as Sophia competently handled the hammer and nails, securing the loose boards. She worked methodically, her movements precise. "You're doing it wrong," Lily teased, mimicking her father's usual phrase. Sophia laughed, a sound that filled the morning air with unexpected warmth. "Then come, show me how, teacher." Throughout the day, Sophia threw herself into every task with enthusiasm. She helped Lily with her homework, discussing literature with an intelligence that wasn't showy but natural. When lunch came around, she insisted on cooking, producing a surprisingly tasty meal from their simple pantry supplies. "Where did you learn to cook?" Ethan asked over their sandwiches. "Our kitchen staff," Sophia answered, then quickly added, "But please don't think I'm showing off. They were more like family to me then." "Well, they taught me because I asked, not because I had to learn." As afternoon settled into evening, Ethan found himself studying Sophia more carefully. She moved through their small cabin with an ease that seemed at odds with her privileged background. There was something almost hungry in the way she absorbed their simple routines, as if each mundane task was a precious gift. While helping with dinner dishes, Sophia accidentally knocked over a glass. Her face went pale. "I'm so sorry. I'll replace it, I promise." "It's just a glass," Ethan said, already reaching for the broom. "You're not angry?" Her voice was small, revealing something broken beneath her composed exterior. "Why would I be angry over an accident?" Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she helped clean up the mess. "In my father's house, everything had to be perfect. Every mistake was noticed." After Lily went to bed, Sophia lingered in the living room. Ethan sat in his usual chair by the fire, pretending to read but watching as she methodically folded laundry from the basket Lily had left out. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I want to." Sophia's movement slowed, and she kept her eyes on the task. "Mr. Walker, I know you must think I'm terribly spoiled and ungrateful, running away from a life most people would dream of having." Ethan set his book aside, sensing the weight in her words. "But in that house," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "I was never just Sophia. I was an obligation, a project, something to be molded into the perfect heir to my father's legacy." Her hands smoothed over a freshly folded towel. "Every party, every charity event, every carefully orchestrated public appearance, I was just a prop in his world, the lonely little rich girl who should be grateful for her privilege." The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Ethan recognized the pain in her voice. It was different from his own, but pain nonetheless. "When I saw this cabin last night in the storm," Sophia said, "I almost didn't knock, but something about the light in the windows. It looked like home should feel." She picked up another piece of laundry, and Ethan noticed how naturally she handled these simple domestic tasks, as if she'd been searching her whole life for the chance to just be useful, to just be herself. "You've made quite an impression on Lily," he said quietly. A small smile touched Sophia's lips. "She's remarkable. You've raised her well, Mr. Walker." "Ethan," he corrected, surprising himself. "You can call me Ethan." Sophia nodded. continuing to fold laundry in the warm firelight. The simple domesticity of the scene stirred something in Ethan's chest, an ache he'd tried to forget. It reminded him of quiet evenings years ago, of shared comfortable silences, of family. He watched her methodical movements, the careful way she creased each fold, and recognized in her actions the same longing for connection that he'd buried deep within himself since losing his wife. Here was someone else who understood the weight of emptiness, albeit in a very different way. The fire cast dancing shadows on the cabin walls as they sat in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, while the evening wrapped around them like a gentle blanket. Morning sunlight painted golden streaks across the dirt road as Ethan's old pickup truck bounced along, kicking up dust in its wake. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, constantly checking the rear-view mirror. Beside him, Sophia sat quietly, her honey-blonde hair tucked under a borrowed baseball cap. In the middle seat, Lily hummed along to the static-filled country music playing on the radio. "Dad, can we stop at Mary's Diner?" Lily asked, breaking the tense silence. "I'm starving." Ethan's jaw tightened. Going to the diner meant being seen, meant questions. But Lily's hopeful expression in the mirror made him sigh. "All right, but we eat quick." The bell above Mary's Diner door chimed as they entered. The familiar smell of coffee and bacon wrapped around them like a warm blanket. But as they made their way to a booth, the usual morning chatter died down to whispers. Mrs. Peterson, who'd lived in town longer than anyone could remember, stopped mid-bite of her toast. Her eyes widened as she stared at Sophia. Two construction workers at the counter turned around, their coffee cups frozen halfway to their mouths. Sophia kept her eyes down, sliding into the vinyl booth with practiced grace. She picked up a menu and held it like a shield. "The pancakes here are amazing," Lily said, either oblivious to or ignoring the stares. "Right, Dad?" "Sure are," Ethan replied, positioning himself so his broad shoulders blocked most of the diner's view of their table. Betty, the waitress who'd served Ethan breakfast for 15 years, approached with her notepad. Her usual warm smile seemed strained. "Well, if it isn't the Walkers and company." Her eyes lingered on Sophia. "Morning, Betty," Ethan said firmly. "3 specials, please." As Betty walked away, the whispers grew louder. "That's her, ain't it? The millionaire's daughter. What's she doing with Ethan Walker?" Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she arranged her silverware, but her voice remained steady. "The sugar packets need straightening," she said to Lily, making a game of organizing the caddy. Lily giggled and joined in. Through the large diner window, Ethan spotted his old friend, Sergeant Mike Thompson, getting out of his truck. Mike's face darkened when he caught Ethan's eye, and he gestured toward the door. "Be right back," Ethan muttered, sliding out of the booth. "Lily, stay with Sophia." Outside, the morning air was crisp and cool. Mike stood with his arms crossed, looking every bit the retired sergeant he was. "Walker, what are you doing?" "Having breakfast, Mike. Don't play dumb with me, soldier. That girl in there, she's all over the papers. Her daddy's offering 50 grand for information on her whereabouts." Ethan's stomach clenched. 50 grand? She's trouble, Walker. Rich folks' problems ain't our problems. Mike pulled out his phone, showing Ethan a news article. "Look here, Sophia Bennett, daughter of philanthropist Richard Bennett, missing for 3rd day. They're saying she might have been kidnapped." Through the window, Ethan watched Sophia showing Lily how to make a paper crane out of a napkin. Her patient smile reminded him of his late wife teaching Lily to tie her shoes. "She wasn't kidnapped," Ethan said quietly. "She ran. Don't matter why she ran. You got Lily to think about. You really want to get mixed up in this?" Betty appeared at their table with 3 plates of steaming pancakes. Sophia helped Lily pour syrup, making sure it didn't spill. The sight of them together, so natural, so right, made Ethan's chest ache. "I appreciate the warning, Mike," Ethan said finally, "but I got this handled." Back inside, Sophia looked up as he slid into the booth. "Everything okay?" Her voice was casual, but her eyes held worry. "Just fine," Ethan replied, picking up his fork. Eat up before it gets cold. They finished breakfast quickly, Ethan paying in cash to avoid using his card. At the hardware store, he gathered supplies while Sophia and Lily picked out paint colors for Lily's room, a project they'd been discussing all morning. How about this blue? Sophia held up a paint chip. It reminds me of the ocean. Perfect, Lily exclaimed. Dad, can we? Ethan nodded, watching them conspire over color schemes. He couldn't remember the last time Lily had been this excited about anything. Since her mother died, she'd been withdrawn, but Sophia had somehow coaxed out her smile again. The drive home was quieter, each lost in their own thoughts. Back at the cabin, Sophia immediately headed to the kitchen, pulling out ingredients for dinner. I thought I'd make pasta, she said. My grandmother's recipe. You cook? Lily asked, surprised. Well, grandmother insisted I learn. She said, even if you have a chef, you should know how to feed yourself. Sophia's voice carried a hint of sadness. Want to help? Soon the kitchen filled with the smell of garlic and herbs. Lily stood at the counter, carefully following Sophia's instructions for rolling meatballs. Their laughter echoed through the cabin as Sophia showed Lily how to test if the pasta was done by throwing it at the wall. If it sticks, it's perfect, Sophia demonstrated, and a piece of spaghetti made a satisfying splat against the wall. Lily doubled over giggling. Ethan watched from the doorway, his decision crystallizing. Mike's warning echoed in his mind. $50,000 was a lot of money. It could pay for Lily's college, fix the cabin's leaky roof, buy a new truck. But as he watched Sophia teach his daughter to make her grandmother's meatballs, saw the joy on both their faces, he knew he couldn't do it. Not yet, anyway. The voice of caution in his head added. But for now, he'd let them have this moment. Let the laughter fill his too-quiet home for just a little longer. The old keyboard sat in the corner of the living room, covered in a thin layer of dust. It hadn't been touched since Sarah, Ethan's wife, passed away 3 years ago. But tonight, something changed. Sophia's gentle hands wiped away the dust with care, her fingers trailing along the worn keys with reverence. Mom used to play this, Lily said softly, hovering nearby. Her eyes held a mixture of sadness and curiosity. Would you like to learn? Sophia asked, patting the space beside her on the bench. We could start with something simple. Lily glanced at Ethan, who stood in the kitchen doorway drying dishes. He gave a small nod, his throat tight with emotion. Really? Lily's face lit up as she slid onto the bench next to Sophia. First, let's position your hands properly. Sophia guided Lily's fingers to rest on the keys. See how your thumbs sit naturally on middle C? That's where everything begins. The first few notes were hesitant and awkward, but Sophia's patience never wavered. She showed Lily how to play Heart and Soul, the simple melody filling the cabin with warmth it hadn't known in years. That's it, Sophia encouraged as Lily struggled through the first measure. Music isn't about being perfect. It's about feeling something in your heart and letting it flow through your fingers. Ethan found himself drawn closer, leaving his dishes half-dried on the counter. He leaned against the wall, watching as his daughter's face scrunched in concentration, then bloomed into delight when she got a sequence right. Dad, Lily called out excitedly, listen to this part. She played a short phrase, slightly uneven but recognizable. Pride swelled in Ethan's chest, and a smile tugged at his lips before he could catch it. Your mother would love this, he said quietly, surprising himself with the words. Sophia looked up, her eyes meeting his. There was understanding there, deep and genuine. Would you like to join us, Mr. Walker? Oh no, I've got 2 left hands when it comes to music, he protested, but Lily was already scooting over making room. Please, Dad, just try. He found himself settling onto the edge of the bench, feeling awkward and oversized next to them. Sophia showed him where to place his fingers, and soon he was playing the simple bass line while Lily attempted the melody. The notes weren't perfect. They stumbled, started over, laughed at their mistakes. But something else was happening in that moment, something that had nothing to do with music at all. The cabin seemed to come alive, filled with a kind of joy that had been missing for so long. Lily's giggles when Ethan hit a wrong note, Sophia's gentle corrections, the way they all swayed slightly to the simple rhythm. It created a picture of family that made Ethan's heart ache with both happiness and fear. "My turn to play something for you both," Sophia said after a while. Her fingers settled on the keys with natural grace, and suddenly the cabin was filled with a beautiful melody. It wasn't complex or showy, but it carried emotion in every note. Lily watched in awe, her eyes wide. "That's beautiful. What's it called?" "It's just something I made up," Sophia admitted, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Sometimes when I couldn't sleep in that big house, I'd sneak down to the piano and just play what I felt." The words hung in the air, a reminder of who she really was, not just the gentle young woman teaching his daughter piano, but someone who had run away from a life of privilege and wealth. Ethan noticed how at home she looked here, in their modest cabin with its worn furniture and simple comforts. Her eyes held more joy teaching Lily basic notes than they had shown in any of the society photos he'd seen on the news. "Can you teach me to make up songs too?" Lily asked eagerly. "Of course," Sophia smiled, and launched into an explanation about chords and melodies that had Lily hanging on every word. The evening stretched on, filled with music and laughter. Ethan found himself relaxing despite his better judgment, drawn into the warmth of the moment. He even caught himself humming along at one point, earning delighted looks from both Lily and Sophia. As the night grew later, Ethan noticed Lily trying to hide her yawns. "Time for bed, kiddo," he said gently. "Just 5 more minutes?" Lily pleaded, but her heavy eyes betrayed her. "The piano will still be here tomorrow," Sophia assured her, then caught herself. "I mean, go on up, Lily," Ethan said quickly, before the moment could grow awkward. "Don't forget to brush your teeth." After Lily hugged them both goodnight and headed upstairs, a comfortable silence fell over the living room. Sophia's fingers still rested lightly on the keys, but she didn't play. "Thank you," she said softly, "for letting me be part of this evening." Ethan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The simple happiness of the night felt both precious and dangerous. "I should probably turn in too," Sophia said, standing up. "Good night, Mr. Walker." Once he was alone, Ethan stepped out onto the front porch. The night air was cool and clear, stars scattered across the dark sky like diamonds on velvet. He gripped the porch railing, his thoughts as vast and scattered as the constellations above. The sound of Lily's laughter echoed in his memory, mixed with the gentle notes of the piano and Sophia's patient voice. It had felt right, felt like home in a way he'd almost forgotten was possible. Looking up at the endless stars, Ethan whispered to himself, "What am I getting us into?" The morning sun painted Main Street in golden hues as volunteers hung red, white, and blue banners across lampposts. The annual Veterans Fundraiser had been a town tradition for 15 years, but this year felt different. The usual excitement mixed with worry. Times were tough, and donations had been slower than usual. Ethan adjusted his tie in front of the hall's entrance mirror. He never felt comfortable in formal wear, preferring his worn work clothes, but today required his best. Lily bounced beside him in a pretty blue dress, while Sophia wore a simple cream sundress that somehow made her look both elegant and approachable. "You look nice, Dad," Lily said, straightening his collar. Very official. Inside the community center, folding tables lined the walls, waiting to be decorated. A small stage stood at the far end, where local musicians would perform later. The smell of coffee and baked goods filled the air as volunteers bustled about. "Can I help?" Sophia asked Mrs. Thompson, the elderly organizer who'd been running the fundraiser since its inception. The woman's face brightened at the offer. "Oh dear, would you? These tablecloths are giving me fits." Mrs. Thompson handed Sophia a stack of blue cloths. Sophia dove into the work without hesitation, spreading tablecloths and arranging centerpieces with natural grace. Lily joined her, the two working in comfortable sync, while Ethan helped other veterans set up the sound system. Throughout the morning, townsfolk trickled in, dropping donations into the clear box near the entrance. Sophia chatted easily with everyone, never letting on about her true identity. She listened intently to old war stories, asked thoughtful questions, and somehow made each person feel special. "That girl of yours," Bob Wilson, a fellow veteran, said to Ethan, "she's got a way about her." Ethan started to correct him, to say Sophia wasn't his, but stopped. The words felt wrong somehow. By noon, the hall was packed. Children ran between tables while parents bid on silent auction items. The local high school band played patriotic tunes, slightly off-key but enthusiastic. Everything seemed perfect, except for the worry lines on Mrs. Thompson's face as she counted the donations. Ethan overheard her whispering to another organizer, "We're not even close to last year's numbers. The Veterans Assistance Program. I don't know how we'll fund it." His heart sank. The program helped local veterans with everything from home repairs to medical bills. He'd seen firsthand how much good it did. Sophia must have overheard too. She disappeared for nearly 30 minutes, though in the crowd few noticed. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed, and she kept checking her phone. The afternoon wore on. Mrs. Thompson took the stage, her smile brave but strained. "Friends and neighbors," she began, "I want to thank you all for coming today. Your support means the world to our veterans, but I'm afraid." A young volunteer rushed up, pressing an envelope into her hands. Mrs. Thompson opened it, and her eyes widened. She pulled out a check, hand trembling slightly. I can't believe this," she stammered. "We've just received an anonymous donation of $50,000. The hall erupted in cheers. People hugged and clapped, some wiping away tears. It wasn't just the money, it was the hope it represented. The knowledge that their community would continue taking care of its own. Ethan watched Sophia during the celebration. She stood slightly apart from the crowd, her eyes bright with unshed tears and her smile gentle. She caught him looking and quickly turned away, but not before he saw the quiet satisfaction in her expression. He didn't need to ask where the money came from. The amount alone told him it could only be her. But what touched him most wasn't the size of the donation. It was how she'd done it, anonymously, without fanfare or recognition, simply because it was needed. The band struck up again, this time playing "God Bless America." Everyone joined in singing, voices raised in joy and gratitude. Sophia's clear soprano carried above the others, pure and sweet. Standing there, watching her sing with such genuine happiness, Ethan felt something shift inside his carefully guarded heart. The walls he'd built after Sarah's death trembled. Sophia caught his eye again, and this time she didn't look away. Her smile reached right past his defenses, warming places he'd thought would stay cold forever. Lily squeezed his hand. "Dad? Are you okay?" He nodded, not trusting his voice. Because he wasn't just okay, he was feeling something he'd forgotten how to feel, something that both thrilled and terrified him. The song ended, and the crowd broke into applause again. Mrs. Thompson was making rounds, hugging everyone in sight. Sophia stayed where she was, content to watch the joy she'd created without taking credit. In that moment, bathed in afternoon sunlight streaming through the hall's windows, she looked nothing like the scared, rain-soaked girl who'd appeared on his doorstep. She looked like she belonged, not just in the hall, but in his life, in their life. The thought should have sent him running. Instead, it felt right, like a piece of a puzzle he hadn't known was missing. Mrs. Thompson called everyone to the refreshment tables, breaking the spell. Sophia turned to help serve cake, her movements graceful and unassuming. But Ethan stood rooted to his spot, wrestling with emotions he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten they existed. How had this happened? When had this young woman, with her quiet strength and generous heart, slipped past all his carefully constructed barriers? He watched as she handed a plate to an elderly veteran, laughing at something he said. and felt his heart stir with feelings that both exhilarated and terrified him. The afternoon light caught the natural highlights in her hair, and for a moment she seemed to glow, not with the artificial polish of her wealthy upbringing, but with something far more precious, genuine joy in helping others. The town's happiness swirled around them all, a testament to how one act of kindness could transform an entire community. But for Ethan, the real transformation was happening much closer to home, in the quiet spaces of his own heart. Morning sunlight streamed through the workshop's dusty windows, catching particles of sawdust that floated like tiny stars in the air. Ethan ran his calloused hands over the smooth curve of the rocking chair's arm, feeling for any rough spots that needed attention. The familiar scent of fresh-cut oak filled the space, mingling with the earthy smell of wood stain and varnish. He picked up his sanding block, working it carefully along the grain. The rhythmic motion helped quiet his mind, still unsettled from yesterday's fundraiser. The sound of footsteps on the workshop's wooden floor made him pause, but he didn't look up. "May I come in?" Sophia's voice was soft, respectful of the quiet morning atmosphere. Ethan nodded, continuing his work. "Watch your step. Sawdust everywhere." Sophia walked carefully around stacks of lumber and half-finished projects, settling onto a worn wooden stool nearby. She watched his hands move with practiced precision across the wood. "Did you learn woodworking in the service?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Ethan's hands slowed slightly. "No, after." He paused, then added, "Helped me adjust when I came home. Something about working with your hands makes the mind quiet down." Sophia nodded, picking up a small piece of sandpaper and running it between her fingers. "How long did you serve?" 20 years. He set down his sanding block, reaching for a finer grit. "Got out when Sarah, my wife, got sick. Lily was 10. The workshop fell silent, except for the gentle scraping of sandpaper on wood. Sophia waited, giving him space to continue if he wanted to. "Sarah loved rocking chairs," he said finally, his voice softer. "Used to say they were like a hug that never ended." She'd rock Lily for hours when she was little, singing those old country songs her grandmother taught her. Sophia's eyes filled with understanding. "Is that why you make them?" Ethan's hands stilled on the chair. "Started making them after she passed. Figured maybe other families could make memories like we did." He cleared his throat. "First few were pretty rough, but kept at it." "It's beautiful," Sophia said, admiring the gentle curves and careful joinery. "You can see the love in every detail." Ethan looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time that morning. There was no pity there, just genuine warmth and understanding. Something in his chest loosened slightly. "The service," he began, surprising himself. "It gives you structure, purpose. Coming home, it's different. Everything's too quiet, too normal." Sarah, she understood that, never pushed. Just sat with me when the memories got loud. Sophia listened intently, her presence somehow both gentle and steady. "She sounds like an amazing woman." She was. Ethan picked up a cloth, wiping away excess sawdust. "Taught me how to laugh again after my first tour. Showed me there was still good in the world." He gestured to the workshop around them. "This place, it was her idea. Said I needed somewhere to put all that energy." "She was right." Sophia smiled softly. "You've created something beautiful here." The workshop door creaked open, and Lily's head poked in. Her eyes widened at the sight of her father actually talking, really talking, with Sophia. "Well, would you look at that?" She grinned, stepping inside. "Dad's actually using full sentences. And is that— Wait, are you smiling?" Ethan tried to scowl but failed, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. "Watch it, young lady. I still know where your ticklish spots are." Lily laughed, coming over to inspect the chair. "Mom would have loved this one, Dad. The curves are perfect." "They're not quite there yet," Ethan muttered, but pride crept into his voice. "Oh, please, Lily rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "You're such a perfectionist. I haven't seen you smile like this in forever, so you must be happy with it." Sophia watched the exchange with quiet joy, seeing the walls around Ethan's heart crumbling just a little bit more. "Want to test it out?" Lily asked, gesturing to the chair. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. He settled into the seat carefully, the wood creaking softly as he began to rock. The motion was smooth, peaceful. Sophia's gentle laugh mixed with the rhythmic sound of the runners on the workshop floor. For the first time in years, the weight in Ethan's chest felt lighter. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, warming the space where three people had found an unexpected moment of peace together. Looking at his daughter's bright smile and feeling the gentle presence of their unexpected guest, Ethan let himself rock in the chair he'd crafted with his own hands. In this moment, surrounded by the work he loved and people who understood, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Peace. The morning sun painted golden ripples across the river's surface as Ethan parked his old pickup truck near their favorite fishing spot. The secluded bend in the river, sheltered by towering oak trees, had been his and Lily's special place since she was little. Now, watching Sophia step carefully down the grassy bank in her borrowed boots, something warm stirred in his chest. "It's beautiful here," Sophia breathed, taking in the scene. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore one of Lily's old flannel shirts over jeans. "I can't remember the last time I just stood by a river." Lily bounced ahead, carrying their tackle box. "Dad and I come here all the time. Well, we used to." She glanced at her father. "We haven't been in a while." Ethan busied himself unloading the fishing poles. "Been busy with work," he said quietly, though they all knew that wasn't the whole truth. Since losing his wife, many of their old routines had fallen away. "I've never actually been fishing before," Sophia admitted, watching Ethan expertly check the fishing line. "Father always said it was beneath us. We had people who caught our fish for us." She laughed, but there was a hint of sadness in it. "Never been fishing?" Lily's eyes widened. "Oh my gosh, you're going to love it. Dad, can I show her how to bait the hook?" Ethan nodded, setting up their folding chairs along the riverbank. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the sweet scent of wild honeysuckle that grew along the water's edge. He watched as Lily guided Sophia's hands, showing her how to thread the worm onto the hook. "Ew, ew, ew," Sophia squealed, but she didn't back away. Her determination made Ethan smile despite himself. "Oh, I did it!" She held up the baited hook triumphantly, beaming with pride, like a child who'd just learned to tie their shoes. "Now for the casting," Lily announced, positioning herself behind Sophia. "You hold it like this, press this button, and then..." She demonstrated the motion. "Just don't let go too early, or you'll catch a tree instead of a fish." Sophia's first cast went straight into a cluster of reeds. Her second barely made it past the shoreline, but by the third try, the line sailed out over the water in a graceful arc, landing with a satisfying plop. "Perfect," Lily clapped. "Now we wait." They settled into their chairs, the quiet broken only by bird songs and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Ethan noticed how naturally Sophia fit into their little group, her presence filling a space they hadn't even realized was empty. Sophia paused, searching for words. "I know it probably seems so simple to you both, but this is the most real thing I've done in years." She looked down at her hands, still slightly dirty from the worm. "At home, everything is so manufactured. Perfect parties, perfect clothes, perfect manners, but nothing feels genuine." Lily reached over and squeezed her hand. "Well, there's nothing fake about worms and fish guts." They all laughed, the sound echoing across the water. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd heard Lily laugh like that, free and unguarded, like she used to before they lost her mother. Oh! Sophia's line suddenly went taut. "Something's pulling." "Reel it in!" Lily jumped up excited. "Steady, not too fast." Ethan moved to help, but Sophia was already handling it like a natural, turning the reel with determined focus. After a brief struggle, she pulled in a decent-sized bass, its scales gleaming in the sunlight. "I caught a fish!" Sophia's face lit up with pure joy. "I actually caught a fish!" "Not bad for a city girl," Ethan said, surprising himself with a teasing tone in his voice. When was the last time he'd joked with anyone besides Lily? As they helped Sophia unhook her catch and release it back into the river, Ethan noticed movement from the corner of his eye. Two men stood partially hidden behind a large oak about 50 yards downstream. One of them held what looked like a camera with a long lens. His military instincts kicked in immediately, but he kept his expression neutral, not wanting to alarm the girls. He watched the strangers pretend to fish while actually taking photos, their attention clearly focused on Sophia. The peaceful morning suddenly felt different. Ethan's shoulders tensed as he scanned the tree line, checking for other observers. He'd known this couldn't last forever, their quiet bubble of simple happiness. Sophia's real world was bound to catch up eventually. Beside him, Sophia and Lily remained blissfully unaware, attempting to bait another hook together, their laughter mixed with the sound of running water and rustling leaves. But Ethan could no longer relax into the moment. His eyes kept drifting to the horizon, to the shadows between trees, to the road visible through the foliage. Lily caught another fish, and Sophia cheered as if it were an Olympic victory. Ethan forced himself to smile, all while keeping the strangers in his peripheral vision. They were still there, still watching, still documenting their private morning for who knew what purpose. The sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the air and sparkling off the water. To anyone passing by, they probably looked like a perfect family enjoying a perfect day. But Ethan knew better. He'd learned in the military that the most peaceful moments often came right before everything changed. The scent of vanilla and melting chocolate filled the cabin's small kitchen. Sophia stood at the counter, showing Lily how to properly cream butter and sugar in a worn mixing bowl. Her sleeves were rolled up, and a light dusting of flour marked her cheek. "The secret," Sophia explained, "is to let the butter get to room temperature first. My grandmother taught me that." Lily leaned in, fascinated. "I didn't know rich people baked their own cookies." "Lily," Ethan called from his armchair, lowering his newspaper with a stern look. But Sophia just laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Most don't. But my grandmother believed everyone should know how to make something with their own hands." She'd say, "Sophia Bennett, a person's worth isn't measured by what they have, but by what they can give." The afternoon light streamed through the kitchen window, catching the copper highlights in Sophia's dark hair as she guided Lily's hands through the mixing process. The wooden spoon made soft scraping sounds against the bowl. "Now we add the vanilla," Sophia said, measuring carefully. Just like that. A sharp knock at the door cut through their peaceful moment. Ethan rose from his chair, his shoulders tensing. Through the window he caught sight of a man in a pressed suit and a woman clutching a notepad. "Stay in the kitchen," he told Sophia and Lily, his voice low and firm. Ethan opened the door just enough to block the view inside. The woman stepped forward, her smile practiced and sharp. "Mr. Walker? I'm Janet Mills from the Daily Chronicle, and this is my photographer, Tom." She thrust her hand forward, which Ethan didn't take. "We're doing a story on Sophia Bennett. Our sources say she's been staying here." "No comment," Ethan said, starting to close the door. The reporter wedged her foot in the doorway. "Mr. Walker, the public has a right to know. Miss Bennett's father is very concerned. There's a substantial reward." "Get off my property." Ethan's voice carried the steel of his military ears. "Now, is it true she's been living here? Teaching your daughter piano?" The photographer raised his camera. Ethan stepped onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind him. He towered over both reporters, his face hard. "I'm only going to say this once. This is private property. If you don't leave immediately, I'm calling the sheriff." The reporter's smile faltered, but she pressed on. "Mr. Walker, surely you understand." 3 seconds, Ethan growled. They backed away, the reporter still clutching her notepad. "We'll be in touch." she called as they retreated to their car. Ethan waited until their vehicle disappeared down the dirt road before going back inside. In the kitchen, Sophia stood frozen, the wooden spoon dripping cookie dough onto the floor. Lily had her arm around Sophia's waist. "They found me," Sophia whispered. Ethan ran a hand through his gray-streaked hair. "Lily, go to your room, but Dad, now please." Once Lily's door closed, Ethan turned to Sophia. "They'll be back, and next time, they'll bring more cameras, more questions. This isn't going to stop." Sophia's hands trembled as she set down the spoon. "I know. You can't stay here forever." Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. "This isn't fair to Lily. Or to you. Please." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Just a little more time. I've never had this before." "Had what?" "Family." The word came out barely above a whisper. "Real family. Not shareholders and charity boards and people who only want my father's money. Here, I'm just me." Ethan looked at the half-mixed cookie dough, at the flour dusting the counter, at this young woman who had somehow worked her way into their lives. His chest ached with a familiar tension, the pull between duty and desire, between protecting his family and opening his heart to something new. "I'll clean up the kitchen," Sophia said quietly, wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry about the reporters." Ethan nodded, unable to find the right words. He stepped outside, letting the cool evening air clear his head. The moon hung low and full over the tree line, casting long shadows across the yard. His boots crunched against the gravel as he paced. Inside, he could hear the soft clink of dishes being washed, the sound of Lily's door opening, their muffled voices resuming their baking. The scene tugged at something deep in his chest, a longing he'd buried with his wife's passing. But the reporters' faces flashed in his mind. They wouldn't give up. They'd keep coming, disrupting the peace he'd worked so hard to build for Lily. And yet, Ethan stopped pacing, staring up at the stars. The same stars he'd looked to for guidance during his darkest nights in service, during the months after losing his wife. They offered no answers now, just witnessed his internal struggle as he tried to reconcile his growing attachment to Sophia with his need to protect what was left of his family. The cabin door creaked open behind him. "Dad?" Lily's voice carried across the yard. "The cookies are ready." He turned to see his daughter silhouetted in the doorway, the warm light from inside spilling out around her. Beyond her, he could make out Sophia's figure moving in the kitchen, putting away ingredients, making their home hers in 100 small ways. His feet stayed rooted to the spot, caught between moving forward and holding back, as the night air carried the sweet smell of fresh-baked cookies across the yard. The community center buzzed with excited chatter as neighbors filled every available chair. Handmade signs promoting veteran support decorated the walls, and the autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee and fresh-baked cookies through the open windows. Ethan sat in the back row beside Lily, his calloused hands clasped tightly in his lap. "Dad, stop fidgeting," Lily whispered, patting his arm. "You look like you're about to jump out of your skin." He forced himself to relax his shoulders but couldn't help glancing toward the small stage where Sophia stood quietly to the side, reviewing her notes. She wore a simple blue dress that made her look both elegant and approachable. Her presence had drawn a larger crowd than usual for these monthly community meetings. Mayor Thompson tapped the microphone, causing a sharp squeal that made everyone wince. "Folks, we're blessed today to have a special guest speaker. Miss Sophia Bennett has some words about our veterans support initiatives." Ethan's chest tightened as Sophia approached the podium. She looked different up there, confident but still genuine. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice warm and clear. "I'm not here today as anyone special. I'm here as someone who's learned what true service and sacrifice mean by living among you." The room fell silent, hanging on her every word. Ethan found himself leaning forward in his chair. "In the past few weeks, I've witnessed something extraordinary in this town. I've seen veterans who gave everything for their country, now giving everything to their community. I've watched them build homes, mentor children, and support each other through the darkest times. Her eyes found Ethan's across the room, and his breath caught in his throat. One particular veteran showed me what real strength looks like. Not the kind that comes from power or money, but the kind that comes from an open heart. He took in a stranger on a stormy night, no questions asked. That's the spirit of service that makes our veterans special. Lily squeezed her father's hand, and he realized his eyes had grown misty. Sophia continued, her voice growing stronger. Today, I'm announcing an anonymous donation to expand our veteran support programs. Every dollar will go directly to helping our heroes, your neighbors, friends, and family members who served. A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd. Ethan knew without doubt that the money came from her personal accounts, carefully arranged to protect her identity. But more important than money is presence. Showing up. Being there. Our veterans need to know they're not alone. Her voice cracked slightly, because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let others in. The audience erupted in applause. Several older veterans in the front row wiped their eyes discreetly. Sophia stepped back from the podium, her cheeks flushed with emotion. Mayor Thompson returned to announce the specific programs, but Ethan barely heard him. His focus remained on Sophia, who had slipped into a chair near the stage. She sat with perfect posture, but he could see the relief in her shoulders now that her speech was done. "Dad," Lily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "She gets it. She really gets it." Ethan nodded, unable to speak. The wall he'd built around his heart since losing his wife was crumbling, brick by brick, and he couldn't stop it. "She feels like Mom's gift to us," Lily continued softly, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Like she was sent to help us remember how to be happy." The truth of his daughter's words hit him hard. He'd been so focused on protecting them both that he'd forgotten what it felt like to truly live, to open his heart to possibilities. As the meeting wound down and people began to mingle, Sophia made her way through the crowd, accepting handshakes and kind words with grace. She moved with an easy confidence that came not from her wealthy upbringing, but from the genuine connections she'd made in their small town. Finally, she reached their row. Lily jumped up to hug her, and Sophia held her close, whispering something that made the teenager laugh through her tears. Then Sophia's eyes met Ethan's. In that moment, everything else faded away. The chattering crowd, the shuffling of chairs, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. He saw in her gaze everything she couldn't say out loud, her fear of rejection, her hope for belonging, and something deeper that made his heart race. He didn't need words to tell her how proud he was, how much her speech had moved him, how she'd awakened something in him he thought had died with his wife. His slight smile and gentle nod said it all. Sophia's answering smile was like sunrise after a long night, full of promise and warmth. They held that connection across the room, sharing an unspoken understanding that everything had changed. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to feel hope, not just for his daughter's happiness or his town's future, but for his own heart's healing. In Sophia's eyes, he saw a future he never expected to find again. The morning started like any other, with Ethan fixing breakfast while Sophia helped Lily pack her school bag. None of them expected their peaceful routine to shatter so completely. The first sign of trouble came with the distant rumble of vehicles, too many for their quiet street. Ethan's military instincts kicked in before his mind could process why. He moved to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to peek outside. "Dear Lord," he muttered, his grip tightening on the fabric. A convoy of news vans lined their narrow street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like metal trees. Reporters spilled out, shouldering cameras and microphones, their faces eager with the scent of a story. "Dad?" Lily's voice trembled. "What's going on?" Sophia joined them at the window, and Ethan heard her sharp intake of breath. The color drained from her face as camera flashes began popping like lightning through their front yard. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, backing away from the window. "I never meant for this to happen." The pounding on their door made them all jump. "Miss Bennett!" voices called out. "Sophia Bennett! Are you in there?" Ethan's jaw clenched. He turned to Sophia, his voice low and controlled, masking the hurt that was beginning to surface. "Bennett? That's really who you are? Please, I can explain," Sophia started, but more shouts from outside drowned her words. "Get away from the windows," Ethan ordered, falling back on his military training. "Lily, go to your room." "But Dad, now." Lily's footsteps thundered up the stairs as another round of knocking rattled the door. Ethan moved to the kitchen, his movements precise and controlled, though his hands shook slightly as he reached for his phone. "I'll call the sheriff," he said, not looking at Sophia. "Get these vultures off my property." Before he could dial, the sound of squealing tires cut through the chaos outside. Through the window, Ethan watched 3 black SUVs pull up, their tinted windows reflecting the morning Sunday. Men in dark suits emerged, their earpieces and stern expressions marking them as security personnel. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out of the middle vehicle. Even from this distance, Ethan could see Sophia's features in his face. The man's presence seemed to part the sea of reporters like Moses himself. "That's your father, isn't it?" Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. Sophia nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "I never lied about why I left. I couldn't tell you everything." The pounding on the door became more insistent. "Mr. Walker," a professional voice called out. "This is Thomas Bennett's head of security. We need to speak with you immediately." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his strength. When he opened them, his expression had hardened into the mask he'd worn in combat. "Stay here," he told Sophia, then moved to answer the door. The moment he opened it, camera flashes nearly blinded him. Microphones thrust toward his face like weapons. "Mr. Walker, how long have you been harboring Sophia Bennett? Did you know she was an heiress? Was this a kidnapping situation?" The security team pushed through the reporters, creating a barrier. The head of security, a man with steel-gray hair and cold eyes, addressed Ethan directly. "Sir, we're here to escort Miss Bennett home. Her father is very concerned." "Dad?" Lily's voice came from the stairs. She'd crept back down, drawn by the commotion. Her eyes were wide with fear and confusion. Thomas Bennett himself pushed through the crowd, his expensive suit out of place in their modest entryway. "Where is my daughter?" His voice carried authority, but Ethan caught the undertone of genuine worry. "Daddy?" Sophia's small voice came from behind Ethan. The following moments blurred together. Security men entered the house. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Sophia tried to explain, her words tumbling out in desperate streams. But her father's stern presence seemed to shrink her back into a child. "We're leaving," Thomas Bennett announced, reaching for his daughter's arm. "This has gone on long enough." "No," Lily burst forward, tears streaming down her face. "You can't take her. Sophia, please don't go." Sophia turned to Lily, her own eyes brimming with tears. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." "Then stay," Lily sobbed. "You said we were family now." Ethan's heart cracked watching his daughter's pain, but anger simmered beneath his grief. "Were we just a convenient hiding place?" he asked Sophia, his voice rough with emotion. "Some quaint little escape from your real life?" "No, Ethan, please." Sophia reached for him, but security personnel stepped between them. "What we had here, what we built, it was real." "Miss Bennett," the head of security interrupted, "we need to go. Now." Sophia's tears fell freely as she was led away, looking back over her shoulder. "I love you both," she called out. "Please believe that." Lily broke away from Ethan's grip and ran after her. "Don't leave us. Don't leave like Mom did." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. He caught Lily in his arms as she tried to pass, holding her tight as she struggled and cried. Together, they watched Sophia being escorted to the waiting SUV, reporters swarming around her like hungry wolves. Thomas Bennett paused at the door, turning back to Ethan. "I apologize for any inconvenience my daughter has caused. You'll be compensated for your trouble. We don't want your money," Ethan said quietly, still holding his sobbing daughter. The SUVs pulled away, taking Sophia with them. The reporters lingered, shouting questions, but Ethan ignored them all. He guided Lily back inside and closed the door, shutting out the chaos. The silence that fell was absolute. Their small cabin, which had been so full of life and laughter just hours before, now felt hollow. Empty coffee cups still sat on the kitchen table. Sheet music lay scattered by the old keyboard, all evidence of a happiness that had been too good to last. Lily's sobs had quieted to hiccups. She pulled away from Ethan's embrace, her face streaked with tears. Without a word, she ran upstairs, her door slamming moments later. Ethan stood alone in his entryway, staring at the closed door. Outside, he could still hear the murmur of reporters. But inside, the silence pressed against his ears like a physical weight. He reached out and touched the doorframe where, just yesterday, Sophia had leaned while laughing at one of Lily's jokes. The memory felt like a knife in his chest. With deliberate movements, he closed and locked the door, shutting out the world that had so rudely invaded their peace. The cabin felt emptier than ever in the days following Sophia's departure. Ethan moved through his routines like a shadow, speaking only when necessary. The kitchen, once filled with laughter and the smell of fresh-baked cookies, now held only the metallic scent of microwave dinners and instant coffee. Each morning, he'd leave before dawn for his workshop, spending hours losing himself in the grain of wood beneath his calloused hands. The familiar rhythm of sanding and sawing helped dull the ache in his chest. Sometimes, he'd catch himself turning to share a thought with someone who wasn't there anymore. Lily tried reaching out at first. She'd hover in the workshop doorway, her school backpack slung over one shoulder, attempting to start conversations that died in the heavy silence between them. But Ethan couldn't bring himself to meet her eyes, knowing he'd see the same hurt there that he felt himself. The weather matched their mood. Gray clouds hung low over the town, bringing intermittent drizzle that made everything feel damp and cold. Even the usual cheerful greetings from neighbors had turned to awkward nods, everyone unsure how to address the elephant in the room. The millionaire's daughter who had briefly made their home complete. One evening, after another silent dinner of reheated leftovers, Lily finally snapped. She slammed her fork down on the table, making the water glasses jump. "You can't keep ignoring me forever, Dad," she said, her voice tight with emotion. Ethan kept his eyes on his plate. "I'm not ignoring you, Lily." "Yes, you are." She pushed back from the table, chair legs scraping against the floor. "You barely look at me anymore. You hide in your workshop all day. It's like," her voice caught, "it's like when Mom died all over again." That made Ethan look up. Lily stood with her fists clenched at her sides, tears streaming down her face. "You pushed her away," Lily continued, her words tumbling out faster now. "Sophia made us happy, made you happy, and you just let her go because you're too scared." "That's enough," Ethan warned. But his voice lacked conviction. "No, it's not enough." Lily's voice rose. "I saw how you looked at her. I saw how she made you smile again. But you're so afraid of getting hurt that you won't let anyone in. You're not protecting us, Dad. You're just making us both miserable." Ethan stood up slowly, his chair creaking. The truth in his daughter's words hit him like physical blows, but old habits died hard. "You don't understand, Lily. It's complicated." "Stop treating me like a child." Lily's face was red now, her hands shaking. "I understand perfectly. You're afraid to love anyone after Mom. But guess what? I'm afraid too. I lost her too. But at least I'm brave enough to try again." The words hung in the air between them. Ethan felt the walls he'd built around his heart starting to crack. "Lily," he said softly, I can't go through that again. Losing your mother nearly broke me. If it wasn't for you." "So you'd rather not feel anything at all?" Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's not living, Dad. That's just existing." Ethan sank back into his chair. suddenly feeling every one of his 55 years. "You're right," he admitted. "I am afraid. Terrified, actually. When your mother died, it felt like someone had ripped my heart right out of my chest. And then Sophia came along, and for the first time in years, I felt that heart starting to beat again, and that scared me more than anything." "So you let her go," Lily said flatly. "I let her go," Ethan echoed, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. Lily shook her head, disappointment written across her young face. "Mom would have wanted us to be happy, you know. She wouldn't have wanted us to stop living just because she died." Before Ethan could respond, Lily turned and stormed up the stairs. The sound of her door slamming echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. Later that night, Ethan sat alone in his workshop, surrounded by the tools and projects that had become his refuge. The unfinished rocking chair sat in the corner, its smooth curves catching the dim light. He'd started it the day after Sophia arrived, inspired by the way she would sit with Lily during their evening talks. Now it stood as a testament to everything he'd left unfinished, everything he'd been too afraid to complete. His fingers traced the grain of the wood, remembering how Sophia had asked about each tool, each technique, her genuine interest making him feel like his simple skills were something special. The workshop felt too quiet, too empty. Even the familiar scent of sawdust couldn't comfort him tonight. Lily's words kept echoing in his head. "That's not living, Dad. That's just existing." He stared at the rocking chair, its incomplete form somehow accusing in the shadows. The piece that was meant to bring comfort now stood as a reminder of all he'd lost and all he'd pushed away. The morning sun cast long shadows through the workshop windows as Ethan sanded the edges of a new coffee table. Wood shavings scattered across the floor with each stroke, the familiar motion doing little to ease the heaviness in his chest. The past week had dragged by, each day a reminder of what and who was missing. He paused his work, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. The workshop felt different now, emptier. The space where Sophia used to sit and watch him work seemed to mock him with its vacancy. Even the old radio, usually playing classic country tunes, stayed silent. A gentle breeze rustled through the gap under the door, catching his attention. That's when he noticed a cream-colored envelope lying on the floor. His heart skipped a beat as he set down his sandpaper and walked over to pick it up. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind Sophia would use. His hands trembled slightly as he turned it over. There was no postmark, just his name written in elegant script. Ethan Walker. Moving to his workbench, he sat heavily on his stool. The envelope opened easily, revealing several pages of handwritten text. Ethan took a deep breath, adjusted his reading glasses, and began to read. "Dear Ethan, I've written this letter a dozen times, trying to find the right words. How do you thank someone for showing you what a real home feels like? Your cabin might be small, but it held more love than all the mansions I've ever lived in. I want you to know that those days I spent with you and Lily weren't just me hiding. They were me finding myself the real me, not the socialite's daughter or the rebellious heiress. Just Sophia, who loves early morning coffee on the porch, who can't bait a fishing hook to save her life, and who finally understood what family means while folding laundry in your living room. You probably think I used you, that I saw your home as nothing more than a convenient hiding place. The truth is, from that first stormy night when you opened your door, I saw something I'd been searching for my whole life. Genuine kindness, given freely without expectation of return. Watching you with Lily showed me what a father should be. Not someone who throws money at problems or tries to shape their child into their own image, but someone who listens, who shows up every day, who loves unconditionally even when it's hard. You taught me that without saying a word." Ethan had to pause, removing his glasses to wipe his eyes. The workshop suddenly felt too quiet, too still. He cleared his throat and continued reading. "I know you're probably angry with me, and you have every right to be. But I need you to know something. I'm not running anymore. When they came to take me home, I realized I couldn't keep avoiding my past. You taught me that too, how to face things head on, with dignity and courage. I'm talking to my father now, really talking, for the first time in years. It's hard and messy, and sometimes we both end up in tears, but we're trying. He's starting to see me as a person, not just an heir to his legacy, and I'm starting to see him as a man who, despite his mistakes, loves me in his own way. But here's what I need you to understand, Ethan. I'm coming back, not as someone hiding from life, but as someone ready to build something real. Those evenings in your workshop, watching you turn rough lumber into beautiful furniture, showed me that sometimes the strongest things come from broken pieces put back together with care and patience. The light through the windows had shifted, afternoon shadows stretching across the floor. Ethan's coffee sat cold and forgotten on the workbench as he turned to the final page. Please tell Lily that her piano lessons aren't over. I still need to teach her that Mozart piece she loves. Tell her that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let people in, even when we're scared of losing them. I learned that from both of you. I don't expect things to be simple. I know trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. But I believe some things are worth fighting for, worth rebuilding. The family we started to become in those few weeks, that's worth everything to me. I've asked Tom from the diner to deliver this letter. By the time you read it, I'll be working on making things right, not just with my father, but with myself. And when I come back, because I will come back, it won't be as someone running away from something. It'll be as someone running towards something. Home. With love and gratitude, Sophia. Ethan read the letter 3 more times, each reading revealing new layers of meaning, new moments of truth. His fingers traced the words as if trying to feel the sincerity behind them. The paper had begun to crease slightly at the edges from his handling. Finally, he stood up, letter in hand, and walked to the corner of his workshop where a small shelf held his most precious possessions. There, in a simple wooden frame he'd made himself, was a photograph of Marie, his late wife. Her smile still had the power to warm his heart, even after all these years. Carefully, reverently, he placed Sophia's letter beside the photograph. The afternoon light caught both items, the old photo and the new letter, making them glow softly together. Ethan touched the frame gently, his weathered fingers brushing against the glass. Maybe second chances do exist, he whispered, his voice barely audible in the quiet workshop. Lily hadn't spoken more than a few words to Ethan since their argument. The breakfast table, usually filled with gentle chatter and the clinking of spoons against cereal bowls, had grown silent. Each morning, she would grab a piece of toast and retreat to her room, leaving Ethan alone with his coffee and regrets. On the 3rd morning of this painful quiet, Ethan stood in the kitchen doorway, watching his daughter pick at her breakfast. Her long brown hair hung like a curtain around her face, shielding her expression from him. The sight reminded him so much of her mother that his chest ached. "Want to go fishing?" he asked softly, breaking the heavy silence. Lily glanced up, surprise flickering across her face before she masked it with careful indifference. "Why?" "Because." Ethan paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because I miss talking to you, kiddo." She studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Let me change first." 20 minutes later, they walked down the familiar path to the river, tackle boxes in hand. The morning air was crisp, and fallen leaves crunched beneath their boots. Neither spoke as they set up their gear at their usual spot, the wooden dock that Ethan had helped rebuild last summer. Lily cast her line with practiced ease, the lure landing with a soft plop in the calm water. Ethan watched her from the corner of his eye as he baited his own hook. Her jaw was set in that stubborn way that was so uniquely her. But he could see the hurt in her eyes. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm sorry I've been such a coward." Lily's hand stilled on her fishing rod. "You're not a coward, Dad. You're just—" She took a shaky breath. "You're just scared." "Yeah." Ethan nodded, staring out at the water. "I am scared. Terrified, actually." Of what? Of loving someone again. Of losing someone again. He swallowed hard. Of seeing you get hurt again. Lily reeled in her lines slowly, then cast it out once more. I miss her, she whispered, and Ethan knew she wasn't just talking about her mother anymore. I miss Sophia too, he admitted, the words feeling both foreign and familiar on his tongue. She brought something back to our home that I thought was gone forever. Joy, Lily said simply, wiping at her eyes with her sleeve. She brought back joy. Ethan set his fishing rod down and turned to face his daughter fully. When your mom died, I thought that was it for me. I couldn't imagine ever feeling that kind of love again. Didn't want to, really. It felt like betraying her memory. Mom wouldn't want you to be alone forever, Lily said, her voice thick with tears. She wouldn't want either of us to be sad forever. No, she wouldn't. Ethan reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Lily's ear, just like he used to do when she was little. Your mom had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. Until Sophia came along. Lily finally turned to look at him, her eyes swimming with tears. Then why did you let her go? The question hit him like a physical blow. Because I was afraid. Because it felt safer to push her away than to risk having my heart broken again. He shook his head. But I was wrong, Lily. Being safe isn't always being right. A fish tugged at Lily's line, but she ignored it, letting the rod rest against the dock's railing. I'm afraid too, you know, she confessed. Every time you leave for work, every time you're late coming home, I get scared I'll lose you like we lost Mom. Ethan's heart cracked at her words. He opened his arms, and Lily fell into them, clinging to him like she hadn't done since she was small. He held her tight, feeling her tears soak into his shirt. I'm sorry, baby girl, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry I let my fear hurt you too. They sat there for a long while, the fishing forgotten, just holding each other as the river flowed quietly beside them. When Lily finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes and gave him a wobbly smile. You know what Mom used to say about love? She asked. Ethan smiled, remembering. That it's like a river? Lily nodded. It keeps flowing, no matter what's in its path. It might change direction sometimes, but it never really stops. She was a wise woman, your mother. Yeah, she was. Lily leaned against his arm, her voice growing stronger. And I think she'd want us to be brave enough to let love flow again. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. The morning sun had risen higher, sparkling on the water like scattered diamonds. His heart felt lighter than it had in days, though the absence of Sophia still ached like a bruise. They gathered their unused fishing gear and started the walk home, their footsteps in sync. The silence between them was different now, peaceful instead of painful. Lily's hand found his as they walked, squeezing it gently. The cabin came into view through the trees, looking somehow both exactly the same and completely different from when they'd left. The empty rocking chair on the porch seemed to watch their approach, a reminder of both what they'd lost and what they might still find. The afternoon sun painted long shadows across the cabin's worn porch steps where Ethan sat, running sandpaper over a small wooden box. Lily was inside, practicing her piano scales on the old keyboard. The familiar sound drifted through the screen door, mingling with birdsong and the gentle rustling of leaves. The crunch of tires on gravel made Ethan look up. A sleek black car, far too expensive for their humble neighborhood, rolled to a stop in front of the cabin. His heart skipped a beat as the rear door opened. Sophia stepped out, more elegant than ever in a simple blue dress, but with the same warm smile that had brightened their home weeks ago. Behind her, a distinguished-looking older man emerged from the other side. Her father, Ethan realized, recognizing him from the news coverage. Lily's piano playing stopped abruptly. The screen door squeaked and slammed as she burst onto the porch. Sophia? Her voice trembled with disbelief. Ethan stood slowly, the unfinished box forgotten in his hands. Sophia walked toward them, her steps sure and graceful. There was something different about her now, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Her father followed a few steps behind, his expression thoughtful and measured. "Hello, Ethan." "Hello, Lily," Sophia said softly. "I hope it's okay that we came by." Ethan noticed her hands were clasped tightly together, the only sign of her nervousness. He set the wooden box down carefully, buying time to steady his own racing thoughts. "I'd like you to meet my father, James Bennett," Sophia continued, gesturing to the older man. "Dad, this is Ethan Walker and his daughter Lily." Mr. Bennett stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Walker, I owe you a debt of gratitude for looking after my daughter." Ethan shook his hand, noting the firm grip. "She looked after us just as much, sir." Sophia's eyes brightened at his words. "That's partly why we're here," she said. "Dad and I have been talking, really talking, for the first time in years, about what matters, about family, about doing good in the world." Mr. Bennett nodded, his expression softening as he looked at his daughter. "Sophia helped me understand some important things, about connection, about what real wealth means. We have a proposal," Sophia continued, her excitement building. "Dad's foundation is going to fund a new Veterans Community Center right here in town, a place where service members can find support, connection, and purpose." She paused, her eyes meeting Ethan's. "We'd like to name it after Sarah, your wife, to honor her memory and your service." Lily gasped, softly beside him. Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion. "But that's not all," Sophia said, taking a step closer. Her voice grew quieter, more intimate. "I'm not running anymore, Ethan. I've faced my past, made peace with my father. Now I'm asking if I can stay, not as someone hiding, but as someone who chooses to be here. Someone who wants to be part of this family, if you'll have me." Lily didn't wait for her father's response. She launched herself at Sophia, wrapping her in a fierce hug as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes, yes, please stay." Sophia held Lily close, her own eyes glistening. Over Lily's shoulder, she looked at Ethan questioningly, hopefully. Mr. Bennett cleared his throat. "My daughter has never been happier than when she was here with you both. I was too blind to see what she really needed, not wealth or status, but genuine love and acceptance. You gave her that, Mr. Walker." Ethan stood rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by the moment. He looked at Sophia, really looked at her. Gone was the desperate runaway who had appeared on his doorstep that stormy night. In her place stood a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. She gently disentangled herself from Lily and stepped toward him. Her hand reached out, trembling slightly. "I understand if you need time," she whispered. "If trust needs to be rebuilt. But I'm not going anywhere this time, Ethan. I promise." The afternoon light caught in her hair, reminding him of that first morning she'd spent in their kitchen, laughing with Lily over breakfast. He thought of the letter tucked away by Sarah's photo, of second chances, and the courage to embrace them. Ethan reached out and took her offered hand, holding it tightly in his own. The touch sent warmth spreading through his chest, melting away the last of his reservations. No words came. They weren't needed. In his grip was all the answer she needed to know. This time, he wasn't letting go. Autumn leaves danced in the crisp morning air as Ethan stood before the half-finished community center. The wooden beams reached toward the sky, promising shelter and warmth for veterans who needed it most. His calloused hands traced the smooth surface of a newly installed support beam, pride swelling in his chest. "Dad, look what just arrived!" Lily's excited voice carried across the construction site. She bounded over, waving a stack of papers, her ponytail bouncing with each step. Behind her, Sophia followed at a more measured pace, carrying boxes of donated supplies. "The program's for opening night," Sophia explained, setting down her load. "What do you think?" Ethan took one of the elegant programs from Lily. The cover featured a photograph of local veterans, himself included, standing proud in their uniforms. Below it, gold lettering read, "The Sarah Walker Veterans Community Center, where service meets family." His throat tightened at seeing his late wife's name. Sophia stepped closer, her hand finding his arm. "Is it okay? We wanted to honor her memory." "It's perfect," he managed, voice rough with emotion. Lily hugged him from the other side, and for a moment, they stood together, a family united in purpose. The sound of hammering and sawing filled the air as construction crews worked nearby. Local volunteers moved back and forth, carrying supplies and checking plans. The whole town had rallied around the project, offering whatever help they could. "Mrs. Henderson just called," Lily announced, pulling out her phone. "She's got 20 more pies promised for the opening reception, and Mr. Collins from the hardware store is donating all the lighting fixtures." Sophia smiled, checking items off a clipboard. "The response has been amazing. Even Dad's impressed. He called yesterday to say he's bringing some of his business friends to the opening." Ethan noticed how naturally she said "Dad" now, without the tension that used to accompany any mention of her father. The weekly visits from Mr. Bennett had evolved from awkward to comfortable, as he learned to see his daughter as the capable, compassionate woman she'd become. "Speaking of donations," Ethan said, leading them inside the partially finished building. The workshop crew finished the furniture for the counseling rooms. He pushed open a door, revealing rows of handcrafted chairs and tables, each piece carefully sanded and stained to perfection. Sophia ran her hand along the smooth wood of a rocking chair. "These are beautiful, Ethan. Just like the one you were working on when you first came to help in my workshop," he finished, sharing a warm look with her. Those early days of working together, learning to trust, seemed so long ago now. "Look!" Lily pointed to where volunteers were hanging a large bulletin board. "That's where we'll post job opportunities and support services. And over there," she gestured to another room, "that's going to be the music therapy space. Sophia's already got 5 other pianists volunteering to teach." The afternoon flew by as they coordinated with volunteers, reviewed plans, and solved last-minute challenges. Sophia moved easily among the townspeople now, no longer the mysterious stranger but a beloved member of the community. She knew everyone by name, remembered their stories, and had a way of making each person feel valued. "You've done good here, Walker," came a gruff voice. Ethan turned to find his old sergeant, Mike, surveying the space with approval. "Never thought I'd see something like this in our little town." "It wasn't just me," Ethan replied, watching as Sophia helped an elderly volunteer arrange chairs for the opening ceremony. Mike chuckled. "No, it wasn't. That girl of yours, both of them, actually. They've brought something special here. Haven't seen you this happy in years, my friend." Ethan couldn't disagree. The weight of grief he'd carried for so long had lightened, making room for new joy. "Life has a way of surprising you," he said quietly. As evening approached, the last of the volunteers headed home. Sophia insisted on treating them all to dinner at the local diner, where Miss Ruby fussed over them and refused to let them pay. "Consider it my contribution to the cause," she declared, serving them extra portions of her famous apple pie. Later, back at the cabin, they gathered in front of the fireplace, their favorite spot for family moments. Lily sprawled on the floor with her homework, while Sophia curled up on the couch, looking over the final details for tomorrow's opening. "Remember when you first taught me to build a proper fire?" Sophia asked Ethan, laughing. "I was so afraid of getting my hands dirty. And now look at you," Lily chimed in, "covered in sawdust half the time from helping Dad in the workshop." Ethan added another log to the flames, watching the sparks dance upward. "You've both taught me a few things, too," he admitted. "About opening up, taking chances." Sophia set aside her papers, her eyes soft in the firelight. "We all needed each other, I think. Dad said something interesting last week, that sometimes the best families are the ones we choose. And we chose each other," Lily declared with teenage certainty, abandoning her homework to join Sophia on the couch. Even if it started with a stormy night and a knock on the door, the fire crackled warmly as they shared memories and hopes for tomorrow's opening. Laughter filled the cabin, Lily's bright giggles, Sophia's gentle chuckles, and even Ethan's deep, rumbling laugh that had once been so rare. Outside, the stars emerged one by one, witnesses to the quiet joy of a family that had found its way to each other against all odds. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the new Veterans Center, its fresh paint gleaming like a beacon of hope. A crowd gathered on the lawn, their excited chatter filling the air. Rows of folding chairs faced the building's entrance, where a wide red ribbon stretched between two posts. American flags fluttered in the gentle breeze. Ethan adjusted his tie, feeling both proud and nervous. The navy blue suit felt stiff and formal compared to his usual work clothes, but today was special. Today, they would dedicate this place to Sarah, his late wife. "You look perfect," Sophia whispered, straightening his collar. Her emerald dress caught the sunlight, making her look radiant. The past few weeks had changed her. Gone was the runaway who had shown up on his doorstep that stormy night. In her place stood a confident young woman who had found her purpose. Lily bounced on her toes beside them, wearing a matching dress. "Look how many people came," she said, gesturing to the growing crowd. "Even Mr. Peterson closed his hardware store early." The mayor stepped up to the podium, tapping the microphone. The chatter died down as people found their seats. Ethan's heart swelled when he saw familiar faces, veterans he'd served with, neighbors who'd helped after Sarah passed, friends who'd become family. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor began, "today marks a special moment for our community. This center represents more than just brick and mortar. It represents hope, healing, and the power of unexpected connections." Sophia squeezed Ethan's hand as the mayor continued. "None of this would have been possible without the generous support of the Bennett Foundation and the vision of Sophia Bennett, who saw the need in our community and took action." Applause rippled through the crowd. Sophia's father, sitting in the front row, nodded with pride. The distance between them had healed, transformed by understanding and respect. "But most importantly," the mayor added, "this center is dedicated to the memory of Sarah Walker, whose spirit of kindness and service lives on through her family." Ethan felt tears prick his eyes as he walked to the podium. The wooden surface felt solid beneath his hands, grounding him. He looked out at the sea of faces, then at Sophia and Lily, who watched him with encouraging smiles. "Sarah believed in second chances," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his heart. "She believed that every person deserves kindness, especially when they least expect it." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I forgot that for a while after she passed. Grief has a way of closing doors, of making us afraid to open them again." The crowd listened in respectful silence as he continued. "But sometimes, life sends us reminders. Sometimes they come knocking on our door on a stormy night." He smiled at Sophia, who wiped away a tear. "This center isn't just about providing shelter or support for our veterans. It's about remembering that family isn't always what we expect it to be. It's about having the courage to open our hearts when life gives us second chances." Lily slipped her hand into Sophia's, both of them beaming with pride as Ethan spoke. The morning sun caught the moisture in their eyes, making them sparkle. "Sarah would have loved this place," Ethan continued. "She would have loved seeing how our community comes together to support each other. But most of all, she would have loved seeing how love finds its way back to us, even when we think it's gone forever." The applause was thunderous as Ethan stepped back. Sophia and Lily joined him at the ribbon, scissors in hand. Together, they cut the red stripe, officially opening the Sarah Walker Veterans Center. Cheers erupted from the crowd, and people began filing inside to tour the facility. The afternoon passed in a blur of handshakes, hugs, and congratulations. Veterans shared stories in the common room, Children explored the garden Lily had helped design, and elderly couples swayed to soft music in the recreation area. The center already felt alive with possibility. As the sun began to set, the crowd thinned. Ethan, Sophia, and Lily decided to walk home together, enjoying the perfect autumn evening. Stars began appearing in the darkening sky, twinkling like distant promises. Lily skipped ahead, humming the tune they'd played earlier. Sophia's hand found Ethan's, fitting perfectly in his calloused palm. The three of them walked in comfortable silence, their footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. Ethan looked up at the stars, then at his unlikely family. "You know," he said softly, "I thought I gave a stranger one night of shelter, but she gave us back a lifetime of love. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending." If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Walker, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.